In this video, we're going to take a look at fixing a custom line style resource file for MicroStation where we have different scales used to create the custom line styles and also the improper fonts or newer fonts that we want to update to. In our particular example, I'm going to be using a resource file shown here in the default Symbology MicroStation root folder, so Program Files, Bentley, MicroStation Connect, MicroStation, then default, and then symbol. And all of the other resource files I have moved to a new folder I made called backup. So this is the only custom line styles I am loading inside of MicroStation Connect Edition version 16. And so that's my starting point. The other thing that's important is you want to make sure that in your design file settings you are using the same units of resolution, in my case 10,000 per distance meter, that the client is using that you're working for. And so the master unit is meters. I bumped up my accuracy, that's helpful, and then also your resolution should be the same as your client. So those are all important settings. Then what I've done is I've laid out some line work here and offset that. For example, if I know that something is going to be 1 to 1,000, that is the requirements of my project, that my text height should be 2 meters when my drawing scale is 1 to 1,000. And so I have taken a line here at the 1 to 1,000 and I've offset that line. And so now if I measure from one end of this line to the other, I see a distance of 2 meters. And so if a line style was truly created at 1 to 1 and I scale it up by 1,000, I should see a text height then of 2 meters, which represents the distance of these outer lines. But I know in my line style resource file, just from experimenting, that I have a couple other scales embedded in there for different line styles, and so I'll show you that example. If I come in, for example, and I select a barbed wire fence and I draw a line, you will see that the text actually fits within those two boundaries. And so, for example, that is at 1 to 1,000, so there's 2 meters of difference here. I'm at a 1 to 1,000 scale. That text is the proper height for 1 to 1,000. But if I jump over and pick, for example, this brick fence, well, that's going to be set up for a 1 to 800. And so, if I come in here, you'll see that that text height is not actually 2 meters in height. It's actually 1.6 meters in height. And so we know that that style, or that custom line style, is too small in the resource file, and so that needs to be scaled up. And that upscale factor is going to be 1,000 divided by 800, which is a value of 1.25. And if I look at one more, I'm going to look at this F-shaped concrete barrier. This particular one was done for 1 to 500, and so instead of that text height being 2 meters at 1,000 scale, it's actually 1 meter at 1,000 scale, and so that is also a problem. So it needs to be doubled in size. So 1,000 divided by 500 will be a scale factor of 2. And so what I've done is I have gone in and made a little table here, and I have put in what ratio or what scale factor that particular custom line style was created originally for. And so we know, for example, the barbed wire fence we just took a look at, it is the correct text height at 1 to 1,000, and so there's not anything that needs to be done to that particular line style. But the next one that we looked at, the brick fence, we know that it was too small. So again, 1,000 divided by 800 is 1.25. For example, the bush line, that's a 1 to 500, so that's half the size that it needs to be inside that particular resource file. And so I've gone through and drawn each custom line style in that sample drawing to determine what scale it looks like it was created for, so that we can adjust it accordingly. And so the 1 to 1,000s, those do not need to be scaled, but the 1 to 500s and the 1 to 800s will all need to be scaled. Before we move forward any further, there's one thing that we need to check in the custom line style resource file that we've obtained from our client. So we need to go to Manage, and we want to open that file. And so go ahead and make sure that you have the proper one open. And you need to double click on each line style and see if there is a number in here other than the number 1. If this is not set to master and 1, then we need to make an additional change. In my experimenting here, this was actually originally set to 10. And so when I came in here and double clicked, I saw that it had an embedded multiplier of 10 in here. And so what that means is if you see that situation, when I was filling out my scale factors, there's two things that need to take place. So let's go back to our barbed wire fence down at the bottom here. Instead of saying 1 to 1,000, if I had a factor of 10 in there, I need to change this to 1 to 100. And so then instead of the scale factor being okay, it's actually off by a factor of 10. And so we want to make sure that we get those back to a setting of 1 here, because if not, it's going to make changing your fonts a lot more difficult. And so just make sure that these are set to 1, and each of these has that individual setting. And so you'll need to go through every one of your custom line styles and make sure that that is set to a value of 1. And if it's, like I said, if it's a factor off by 10, which it probably would be, then you would need to go back to your table again and adjust that. So if I change the number 10 to a number 1, this is going to then become 1 to 100. And so that means that I'm 10 times too small. So the next step in the process then is to go ahead and create a blank new DGN file. And so let's do that. I'm going to make a new file here, and I'm just going to call this Linestyles New Scale. And so we'll select Linestyles New Scale.dgn. Again, using our customer seed file here to make sure we get the right units of resolution. So we'll create that file. And this is a blank file. I want to go ahead and set my active drawing scale to 1 to 1, and then just verify that your units of resolution here are going to be correct. So we'll go to File, and then we'll go to Settings, File, Design File, Settings, Working Units. So I'm 10,000 per meter, and my master unit readout is meters. You might want to go ahead and bump up your accuracy to 6. That will help you. And so we'll save settings. And so now we're ready to bring these line styles in. And so I'm using this resource file from the client, and I want to bring in the appropriate ones. I'm going to start with the 1,000 scale that doesn't need any rescaling. So we know that those are correct. And so if I go down to my manager for my custom line styles, and I select to import a resource file, I'll select that. And then I'm going to pick all of the ones that are set for 1 to 1,000. Now the way that I do this is I select something with my left mouse, and then I hold down my control key and select the remaining ones. So now I have all of those selected that are 1 to 1,000. And because I'm not going to be resizing these, I'm going to leave my scale ratios at a 1 to 1. But however, having said that, if you did have that master unit set, for example, if it was a 10, then you're looking at going from 100 scale to 1,000 scale. And so you're going to have basically 100 divided by 1,000. So if you had my situation, this would actually become a 0.1, which would reflect what you had adjusted in your table that we talked about earlier. Import those into this brand new blank file. So we'll select Import, and those have been imported. Now we want to do the next batch, so we're going to select File, Import again, and this time we're going to pick all of those that are designated for the 1 to 800, and so I'm going to go in and select those now. So with those selected, now our scale factor is going to change, and so we need these to become larger. So we take 1,000, which is our scale of target, and divide that by 800, which is the scale these were set up for. We want that, take that divisor to make these larger. And so if I bring up my calculator, 1,000 divided by 800, that's going to be 1.25. But in reality, we want to use the inverse, the way that this dialog is set up. So it's going to be 800 divided by 1,000 is going to be 0.8. And so that will actually scale it up. And it's kind of thinking the opposite here, but we're going to set this to 0.8. And then we're going to import these that were set up for 1 to 800 ratio scale. So we'll import those. And so those have been brought in, and then we'll repeat the process one last time. And this time we're going to pick the remaining ones which are set up for 1 to 500. Again, using my control and my left mouse click. Now, this time you're going to put 0.5 because it's going to be 1,000, or I'm sorry, 500 divided by 1,000. It's going to be 0.5, and that will double the size of these. And so we want to go ahead then and import that. And now everything is in this active DGN file. So now we want to take back to our Linestyle editor, and we want to export our line styles that are in this file from the DGN over to a brand new resource file. And I'm going to put that into my temp folder, and I'm just going to call this rescaled linestyles.rsc, and those have now been written. And so at this point we are ready to close MicroStation. We need to take our temporary, or in our temporary folder, the file that we just created. And so I'm going to grab this resource file, I'll make a copy of that, and we're going to put that back up into MicroStation where we were working. And so we'll paste that one. And then this is the original file. I'm just going to rename that so we've got it as a backup just in case. You know, that's the original file from the client. And so we will let that be, and then we'll restart MicroStation. Now to do this work, again, we want to make a brand new file. And so I'm going to go back to my temporary folder. And I'm just going to call this Line Styles Fonts, because that's going to be the next thing that we do here, is to fix our fonts. And so we will go ahead and make that file. And just a final check here before we begin to work on the fonts. If I go to 1 to 1,000 here and I redraw in this brand new file my 3 test cases. So the first one was a barbed wire fence, and so if I draw that, let's zoom in a little bit, I should be at 2 millimeters there. And so if I come in and I measure the height of this text, let's say from there to there, I am at 2 meters, which at a 1 to 1,000 is 2 meters, which is what we want. At a 1 to 1, that would be 2 millimeters, which is the final product requirement for the client. The next one is the brick fence. So we'll look at the brick fence, and so we'll draw that line. So here's our brick fence. And again, if we measure that text height, again, we're at 2 meters now, so that you can see that that's fixed. And then lastly, the F-shaped concrete barrier, which was done at a 500. And so now if we draw that one, and then we measure this text that is placed, lastly, again, 2 meters. And so now all 3 are at the proper scales. And so we know that we did that proper. We are at 2 meters in height at a 1 to 1,000, or 2 millimeters at height at a 1 to 1, which would be, in our sheet model, would be 1 to 1 for plotting purposes. And so this is all proper. Now, let's begin to talk about the fonts. And I'm just going to use this, this middle one here. It doesn't really matter which one I demonstrate this in. But we need to replace the old MicroStation resource fonts here with Arial TrueType fonts to match up with the fonts of this particular client's standards. And so to begin to do that, we want to go ahead and set our active drawing scale back to a 1 to 1. And so, of course, when you do that, you're going to have to zoom way in to be able to see your text again at this point. And so we'll go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to save settings. Next step is to prepare our text so that we can update our custom line style. And so I'm going to go to the place text or the draw text command and make sure everything is set properly. So make sure that I'm at center justification, that I am at the proper size, and again I want to be at 2 millimeters or 0.002 meters when I'm at a 1-to-1 scale. So I have my proper font, my proper justification, and my proper size. And then I'm going to type in the letter that I want to place. And so, again, I don't care where I place this, just somewhere out in space here is fine. And then go ahead and close our text editor. Now we want to come to our custom line style manager, and I want to select the one that we're working on. In this case, we're working on our brick fence. And these custom line styles that have text in them are generally speaking going to be the combination of a point and a stroke. And so we want to double click on point. And here you will see your graphical representation of your stroke pattern, where in the middle portion of your stroke pattern is that letter B. And with that highlighted, I want you to hit select, and we need to find the exact spelling of what it is we are replacing. And so you'll see for this letter B, I got the same picture when I selected the word brick. And so go ahead and hit cancel and pay attention to the upper and lower case, its spelling, all that has to be exactly matched. Now we want to update that cell in the custom line style resource file. To do that, we go over to the place or define cell origin, and we want to snap again to our center of our text and then do a reset, and then put that letter B or that piece of text in a selection set. Then in your line style editor, we want to then choose create and put the exact same spelling in there, and then press your tab key and then select OK. And then select OK to replace that cell, and you should see a new look then appear when you go into brick. And so if I switch back and forth, you'll see it's updated, and then we will go ahead and save those changes to our resource file. And that's all there is to updating the font in that custom line style. You didn't have to go and recreate everything. And so just to test this, you could, make a new line or make a new file and, come back in and all that. But there's another way to do this. And so all you have to do is in your importing here, and so file, import from resource file, and you're going to pick the same resource file that you have opened. This is one way to do it. And then just go ahead and pick the brick fence and import, and it will go ahead then and update. If you zoom in and zoom out, you'll see the change. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to delete. You can delete the line, and then you can do compress with unused line styles turned on, and then you can redraw the line. So that's another way. And then when you go to place again, now you'll see your updated line style. That's just a couple of ways that, instead of making a new file come back in, you could do it a little bit quicker in regards to your test. And then if we do a measure now from the bottom here to the top, again, we're at 0.002 meters. At 1,000 scale, that would then be 2 meters, and so that is what we want to be at, and so we should be in good shape.